If your family ever made you feel invisible on purpose, listen closely. Mine locked me out of a public event to embarrass me, not knowing I had a truth so big it would stop the room and change everything forever. I knew something was wrong the moment my phone stayed silent. Everyone else was talking about the event, but no one asked if I was coming. That silence hurt more than any insult. My family was hosting a big ceremony. It was public, formal, important. My father's name was on the banner, and my brother's photo was on the invite. People from all over were flying in. Old friends, officers, leaders, and me. Nothing. No call. No text. No message asking if I could make it. First, I told myself it was a mistake. That maybe they assumed I knew. Maybe my invite got lost. But deep down I already understood. This wasn't new. This was familiar. Growing up, I learned early how easy it was for them to forget me. If I stayed quiet, they didn't notice. If I spoke up, they brushed past it. Over time, I learned to stop expecting space at their table. Still, something about this event felt different. Bigger. Louder. Like another moment where I would be edited out of the story on purpose. I sat alone that night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same question I always asked. Do I show up anyway? Or do I disappear like they expect? By morning I had my answer, even though I didn't know what it would cost me. Walking toward the building felt heavier than it should have. Every step reminded me I wasn't invited. But something inside me refused to turn around. The place was already buzzing when I arrived. Cars lined the street. People laughed in groups. Everyone looked confident like they belonged there. I didn't. Kept my head up anyway. At the entrance, a security officer checked names. He smiled politely, scrolling through his list. Then his smile faded. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't here. Felt it. That sharp drop in my chest. The feeling I knew too well. Then I saw my father. He stood a few steps away watching. Not surprised. Not confused. Almost satisfied. He leaned toward someone beside him and said, loud enough for me to hear, "She's not supposed to be here." That sentence did more damage than he knew. People nearby glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I thanked the guard and stepped aside, my face calm even though my hands were shaking. For a moment I thought about leaving, getting in my car, driving away like I always did, letting them win without a fight. But then something inside me snapped. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. I was done shrinking. Instead of leaving, I walked toward my car for a reason none of them expect. As I reached my car, memories rushed in fast. Not good ones. Not bad ones. Just quiet reminders of everything they never saw. My family always praised strength they could see. Loud voices, big gestures, public wins. My brother fit that world perfectly. I didn't. I like thinking, planning, solving problems no one else noticed. I worked in places without windows, where silence mattered more than applause. The kind of work you couldn't talk about at dinner. And they never asked. They never asked why I missed holidays. Never asked why I moved so often. Never asked why I stopped trying to explain myself. At family events I was introduced last. Or not at all. She works in an office, my father used to say. I let him believe it. Over the years I built something real. Something strong. Something earned. Promotions came quietly. Responsibility grew heavier. Decisions I made affected people I would never meet. But my family still thought I was small. Standing by my car, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. They didn't know me. And that wasn't my failure. I opened my trunk, ready to make a choice that would change everything. The moment my hand touched the garment bag, my heart slowed. This wasn't anger anymore. This was clarity. I stood there alone with cars passing behind me and voices drifting from the building. Inside that bag was the truth I had kept quiet for years. Not to hide, but to survive. I took a deep breath and unzipped it. The uniform was clean, dark, heavy in a way that felt right. I changed slowly, carefully, like I was honoring every long night and hard choice that brought me here. When I pinned the stars in place, I felt taller. Not because of rank. 'Cause I finally stopped pretending. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She wasn't the forgotten daughter. She wasn't the invisible sister. She was someone who had earned her place without permission. I stepped out of the car and closed the door quietly. No rush, no fear, just purpose. They had tried to lock me out. Now I was walking back in on my own terms. Inside that hall, they were about to learn who I real. Why was? The doors felt heavier when I pushed them open the second time. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. The hallway smelled like polish and old wood. Portraits lined the walls, faces of people who had been honored, remembered, respected. I walked past them slowly, my heels echoing in the quiet space. No one stopped me this time. A few heads turned. Conversations dipped, then picked back up. Most people didn't recognize me yet. They just saw the uniform. And the stars. Inside the hall, music played softly. My family sat near the front. My father was smiling, relaxed. My brother leaned back in his chair, confident, comfortable. None of them had seen me. I stayed near the back for a moment, letting the room breathe. Letting myself breathe. Years of being overlooked pressed against my chest, but I didn't let them bend me. Then someone noticed. A man near the aisle froze mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto my shoulders. His face changed instantly. He straightened and said loud and clear, "Admiral." The word cut through the room like a blade. That single word was about to turn every head in the hall. Silence spread fast like a held breath. I hadn't said a word, but suddenly everyone was listening. One by one, people began to stand. Not out of confusion. Not out of curiosity. Out of respect. Chairs scraped the floor. Conversations died. A ripple moved through the crowd as more uniforms rose to their feet. Some nodded. Some stared. All of them understood. I walked forward slowly. Every step felt measured. Controlled. The aisle opened without anyone asking it to. Faces blurred together, but I caught glimpses of recognition. Of memory. Of quiet understanding. These were people who knew my name from briefings that never made the news. From decisions that ended threats before they became headlines. I reached the front row and took my seat calmly. The speaker at the podium had stopped talking. His notes were forgotten. He cleared his throat, unsure how to continue. Then he said it. "Ladies and gentlemen, Rear Admiral." That was it. No speech. No explanation. The truth was already standing in front of them. And in that moment I finally looked at my family. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. None of those versions prepared me for their faces. My father's smile was gone. He stood frozen, his hand still wrapped around his glass. His eyes moved from my face to my shoulders, then back again like his mind couldn't catch up. My mother pressed a hand to her mouth. Her eyes filled not with pride yet, but with shock. Like she was seeing a stranger. My brother looked lost. The confidence he always carried slipped away. His posture changed. His shoulders dropped. He didn't look angry. He looked small. And for the first time I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Or soften the moment. Or make them comfortable. This wasn't revenge. This was reality. I sat straight, hands folded, eyes forward. Letting the weight of the moment settle without interference. They had written a story where I didn't matter. Now they were watching that story collapse in real time. After the ceremony ended, the real conversations began. Once the applause faded, people started moving toward me. Slowly, carefully, like they didn't want to say the wrong thing. Senior officers came first. Handshakes, quiet smiles. Short sentences meant only for me. "It's good to finally meet you. I've heard your name for years." They didn't need details. They already knew enough. Then my brother stepped closer. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Long enough," I said. He nodded, swallowing hard. There were 100 things he could have said, but none of them came out. For once, he didn't rush to fill the silence. My father waited. When he finally stood in front of me, he didn't speak right away. He just looked, really looked, not past me, not through me. Then he gave a slow nod. It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. And somehow that was enough. Months later, something changed in a place I never expected. The hall emptied, but the moment didn't end there. It followed me home, quiet and heavy like something unfinished. After the ceremony, everything went still. Not the good kind of still. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where no one knows what to say anymore. People I worked with sent short messages. Simple ones. Good to see you. Well deserved. Nothing dramatic. They understood moments like this didn't need noise. My family, on the other hand, said nothing. Days passed. No text. No calls. No awkward jokes trying to smooth things over. Just space. At first, that silence felt familiar. It reminded me of every holiday where my name was skipped, every dinner where my achievements landed flat on the table. I had lived in that quiet my whole life. But this time it felt different. This silence wasn't ignoring me. It was processing me. A week later, my phone rang. It was my father. He didn't start with small talk. He never did. "What do you actually do?" he asked. No edge. No judgment. Just curiosity. The question landed heavier than any apology could have. It was the first time he had ever asked me that without already deciding the answer in his head. I explained what I could. Carefully. Simply. I didn't talk about missions or numbers or names. I talked about responsibility. About pressure. About making decisions that don't get second chances. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't correct me. Didn't downplay it. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he said, "I didn't know." I waited for more, but nothing came. And for the first time, I didn't need it to. When the call ended, I sat there for a long moment, phone still in my hand, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not because he finally understood everything, but because I no longer needed him to. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. No replaying old conversations. No wishing I had said more. No wondering if I should have been different. I realized something then. The power of that day wasn't in the room standing up. It wasn't in the uniform. It wasn't even in my family finally seeing me. It was in the fact that I didn't need the silence to end anymore. 6 months later, I walked into a place that once erased me, and noticed something that stopped me cold. The house hadn't changed, but the way I walked into it had. I could feel it before anyone said a word. Pulling into my parents' driveway felt strange. I had been there 100 times before, yet this time my hands didn't tense on the steering wheel. The house looked exactly the same. Same bricks. Same windows. Same porch light that always flickered for a second before turning on. Inside, the smell of my mother's cooking wrapped around me. Familiar. Warm. Almost disarming. Dinner was quieter than usual but not uncomfortable. My mother asked how my drive was. Not out of habit but interest. My father waited for me to finish speaking before responding. Small things, but they stood out. Then I saw it. The display cabinet in the living room. I stopped walking. Right there in the center was one of my medals. Clean. Polished. Placed carefully like it mattered where it sat. It wasn't hidden behind other things. It wasn't pushed to the side. It had space. No one announced it. No one looked at me to see my reaction. They didn't need to. The message was already clear. For years, that cabinet told a story I didn't belong in. Now, without words, it had changed. At the table, conversation moved slowly. Not rushed. Not forced. My father asked about leadership, not ranks. About responsibility, not titles. I answered in ways I never had before. Honestly. Without shrinking my words. My brother watched quietly. After dinner, when my parents stepped into the kitchen, he stayed behind. He looked uncomfortable, like someone about to say something they'd been holding for years. "I always thought I had to stay ahead of you," he said. I didn't want to fall behind. I didn't interrupt him. "I didn't know we were carrying different weights," he added. That hit deeper than he probably meant it to. I told him the truth. That I never saw him as competition. That I just wanted space to be myself. He nodded slowly, like something inside him finally settled. When I left that night, no one made a big moment out of it. No speeches. No promises. And that's why it mattered. Because real change doesn't announce itself. Just shows up and stays. Driving home, I realized the moment that truly changed everything had nothing to do with the ceremony. The most important change didn't happen in the hall. It happened later, when I was alone with my thoughts. The drive home was quiet. No radio. No calls. Just the steady sound of the road beneath my tires. Streetlights passed in a slow rhythm, lighting up the windshield and fading again. I kept replaying the day, not because I needed to relive it, but because my mind was trying to understand what it meant. People would remember the moment the room stood. They would remember the shock. They would remember the silence. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. What stayed with me was the parking lot. Standing there alone. Opening my trunk. Making the choice to stop walking away. I realized something then that surprised me. That moment had nothing to do with my family. It wasn't about proving my father wrong. It wasn't about finally being seen. It wasn't even about respect. It was about me deciding I no longer needed permission to exist fully. For years I had lived carefully. I spoke softly. I shared only what felt safe. I let people underestimate me because correcting them felt exhausting. I told myself it didn't matter what they thought. But it did matter. Not because I needed approval, but because shrinking slowly teaches you to forget your own shape. That day I remembered it. The uniform didn't give me confidence. The rank didn't create my strength. They only reflected what was already there. I thought about all the times I stayed quiet to keep the peace. All the moments I stepped back so others could feel comfortable. I saw now how often I had mistaken patience for invisibility. There's a difference. Patience is choosing your moment. Invisibility is believing you don't deserve one. Somewhere along the way, I had crossed that line without noticing. Until that day. As the road stretched ahead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement. Not pride. Relief. I wasn't carrying the weight of wanting to be understood anymore. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to edit my story so it fit into someone else's version of me. I finally understood the truth I had avoided for years. Being seen by others feels good. But seeing yourself clearly changes everything. That's when I knew the ceremony wasn't the ending. It was the beginning. I used to believe respect was something other people decided. That belief kept me small longer than anything else ever did. For a long time I thought my place in the world depended on how others treated me. If they ignored me, I assumed I didn't matter. If they doubted me, I questioned myself. I know now how wrong that was. Respect doesn't begin when someone else finally sees you. It begins when you stop hiding who you are. That day, I didn't walk into the hall to teach my family a lesson. I didn't walk in to embarrass them or demand an apology. I walked in because I was done leaving parts of myself outside the door. I had spent years waiting for the right moment. Waiting to be invited. Waiting to be acknowledged. Waiting for someone else to decide I belonged. But belonging doesn't work that way. The moment I stopped waiting, everything shifted. My family didn't suddenly become perfect. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But something important changed. They stopped speaking over me. They stopped explaining my life for me. They started listening. And more importantly, I stopped needing them to. I learned that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like standing still while the world catches up to you. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself quietly, without asking permission. I no longer measure my worth by how others respond. I measure it by how honestly I show up. If they remember me, good. If they forget again, I will not disappear. 'Cause I know who I am. I am not the afterthought. I am not the background character. I am not the version of me they were comfortable with. I am the result of every hard choice, every silent victory. Every moment I kept going without applause. Taking my place didn't require approval. It required courage. And that courage didn't come from rank or recognition. Came from finally trusting myself. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment I stopped letting others write it for me. And for the first time in my life, I walked forward knowing I belonged exactly where I stood.